Hi, guys. All right, we're continuing our adventure in My Father's Dragon, and we're reading chapter 5. My father meets some tigers. But before we dove into this, I did want to help you guys out. So, at the beginning of this book, there's a very cool island, the Wild Islands. And so he landed on our friend Elmer Elevator, ran away from home to save a dragon, sailed on the ship, and got on. Whoops, sorry. Try to figure this out. There we go. He landed on Cranberry Island, way up, or Cranberry Port, way up here. And then he traveled the island of Tangerina, crossed our ocean rocks where the sleeping whale was snoring and that he stepped on. And then he made it here. And so Elmer Elevator traveled along the beach, and there's the boar that he ran into last time. And then here by the clearing, it looks like our chapter says my father meets the tigers. So let's see what happens as he's trying to make his way to the river to save the dragon. So chapter 5, my friends. Chapter 5. Chapter 5. My father meets some tigers. The river was very wide and muddy. The jungle was very gloomy and dense. Dense is another word for thick, or just a bunch of trees in a small area. The trees grew close to each other, and what room there was between them was taken up by great high ferns with sticky leaves. My father hated to leave the beach, but he decided to start along the riverbank, where at least the jungle wasn't quite so thick. He ate 3 more tangerines, making sure to keep up all the peels this time, and put on his rubber boots. My father tried to follow the riverbank, but it was very swampy. As he went farther, the swamp became deeper and deeper. When it almost was as deep as his boots tops, he got stuck in the oozy, mucky mud. My father tugged and nearly pulled his boots right off. But at last he managed to wade to a drier place. Here, the jungle was so thick that he could hardly see where the river was. He unpacked his compass and figured out the direction he should walk in order to stay near the river. But he didn't know that the river was made a very sharp curve away from him just a little way beyond. And so he walked straight ahead. He was getting farther and farther away from the river. It was very hard to walk in the jungle. The sticky leaves of the ferns caught up my father's hair, and he kept tripping over roots and rotten logs. Sometimes the trees were clumped so closely together that he couldn't squeeze between them and had to walk the long way around. He began to hear whispery noises, but he couldn't see any animals anywhere. The deeper into the jungle he went, the surer he was that something was following him. And then he thought he heard whispering noises on both sides of him as well as behind him. He tried to run, but then he tripped on more roots, and the noises only came nearer. Once or twice, he thought he heard something laughing at him. At last, he came into a clearing, which is a place in the jungle where there's not a lot of trees. It's like a small meadowy clearing, and ran right into the middle of it so that he could see anything that might try to attack him. Was he surprised when he looked and saw 14 green eyes coming out of the jungle all around the clearing? And the green eyes turned into 7 tigers. The tigers walked around him in a big circle, looking hungrier all the time. And then they sat down and began to talk. I suppose you thought we didn't know you were trespassing in our jungle. Then the next tiger spoke. I suppose you're going to say you didn't know it was our jungle. Did you know that not one explorer has ever left this island alive? Said the third tiger, licking his lips. My father thought of the cat and knew this wasn't true. But of course he had too much sense to say so. One doesn't contradict a hungry tiger. Or contradict is a fancy word for prove wrong or, that's a good way to explain it. The tigers went on talking in turn. You're our first little boy, you know. I'm curious to know if you're especially tender. Maybe you think we have regular meal times, but we don't. We just eat whenever we're feeling hungry, said the fifth tiger. And we're very hungry right now. In fact, I can hardly wait, said the sixth. I can't wait, said the seventh. And then all the tigers said together in a loud roar, let's begin right now. Roar! And they moved in closer. My father looked at those 7 hungry tigers, and then he had an idea. He quickly opened his knapsack and took out the chewing gum. The cat had told him that tigers were especially fond of chewing gum, which was very scarce on the island, so he threw them each a piece. But they only growled. As fond as we are of chewing gum, we're sure we'd like you even better. And they moved in closer so that he could feel them breathing on his face. But this is very special chewing gum, said my father. If you keep on chewing it long enough, it will turn green. And then if you plant it, it will grow more chewing gum. And the sooner you start chewing, the sooner you will have more. The tiger said, well, why didn't you say? Isn't that fine? As each one wanted to be the first to plant the chewing gum, they all unwrapped their pieces and began chewing as hard as they could. Every once in a while, a tiger would look into another's mouth and say, nope, it's not done yet. Until finally they were all so busy looking at each other's mouths that they made mouths to make sure that no one was getting ahead of the other, that they forgot all about my father. Silly tigers. They are all those goofy tigers staring into each other's mouths to make sure that they're not getting ahead in that chewing gum. And that's it, my friends. Next time we'll read My Father Meets a Rhinoceros. But as far as the why question for chapter 5, why do you think the author wrote the book My Father's Dragon? Did she write it to teach us some history? Did she write this book about herself? Is it a biography? No, because a girl wrote this book, Ruth Stiles Gannett. And this book is about a boy's father. Do you think she wrote it for fun? To entertain us? What do you think? Yeah, I agree. I think that she wrote this book so that we could have fun and so that we could be entertained and use our imaginations to picture what happens to Elmer Elevator as he saves the dragon. But hope you guys have a good time. I'll see you later.